Welcome to Disney Coast to Coast, a show celebrating and questioning one of the most beloved entertainment companies in the world through honest, passionate, and clear-eyed Disney discussions. I'm Jeff DePauli, your entertainment-obsessed host with rose-colored glasses removed. Today on the show, I have my final Halloween episode of the season for you, and this one is full of all treats, no tricks. A lot of times, people ask me what my favorite conversation is that I've ever had on Disney Coast to Coast. I've had lots of great ones, so it really is impossible for me to choose just one. But the conversation you're about to hear is easily one of my absolute favorites of all time. This past October 9th, I produced an event called an Oogie Boogie Afternoon at the Frida Cinema in Santa Ana, California. The event featured a screening of Tim Burton's The Nightmare Before Christmas, preceded by a conversation with folks from Disney Live Entertainment about the creation of Disneyland Resort's mega-hit Halloween party, Oogie Boogie Bash. You are about to hear that conversation I had with Oogie Boogie Bash creator and show director Jordan Peterson, producer Jennifer Magill, and lighting and projection designer KC Wilkerson. Folks, the conversations you're going to hear today will absolutely thrill you. I've conducted a lot of interviews through the years, and I pride myself on doing a grand amount of research before interviewing my guests. For that reason, I often know the answers to a lot of the questions I ask them. In the case of Oogie Boogie Bash, there is so little information out there about this event's creation, as this was the first time it was ever really spoken about. So my mind was being blown left and right throughout our talk. Just from the backstory of Oogie Boogie Bash alone, which you'll hear during the conversation, it brought the party to a whole new level for me. The passion that Jordan, KC, and Jennifer have put into Oogie Boogie Bash is so evident, and as a guest experiencing the party, I am so grateful for that. Listen as they share stories never discussed with the public until now.
Get ready for a special conversation about a Disney special event.
Let's start off. We're just going to start down the line. We'll start at KC. Why don't you introduce yourself, give your title, and what you're responsible for in regards to Oogie Boogie Bash.
Okay, so my name is KC Wilkerson. I'm the principal media designer for Disney Live Entertainment at the Disneyland Resort. And for Oogie Boogie Bash, so the position that I'm in now is new. I was the principal lighting designer prior to, in the before times. And so, I designed all of the lighting specifically for Villains Grove, and then oversaw some of the projection as well. How many of you guys, you've seen Villains Grove? Okay. That's our baby.
Hey, I'm Jordan Peterson. My title is shorter, so I'm the director for Oogie Boogie Bash. I guess the idea of my role here would be the initial concept design behind the party itself. The resort comes and says, hey, we're thinking about a new Halloween-themed event. What do you got? We go away, we develop it. So the initial concept design behind the party as a whole, and then surprisingly, all the individual pieces as well was the initial creative concept design behind. So from outside of Villainous, so when you had Mickey's Trick or Treat and you had Descendants and the OG, the immersive trails themselves, that conceit, that idea, the brand behind the immersive tree trails, Villains Grove was our baby from the beginning. And then the parade, and when it opened with World of Color, those two were not mine. But that's kind of what I do overall. And then she pays for it.
Hi, I'm Jennifer. I'm the mean one. I'm the one that says that we don't have enough money or time for that. Right. No, I am a senior producer at Disneyland Resort for Entertainment. Worked with these guys on Oogie Boogie Bash and all the different elements for that production, as well as World of Color is my second child, and a number of things at Hyperion, special events, and that kind of good stuff.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, welcome. Thank you for being here. There you go. Through the years, Disneyland Resort has had quite a few Halloween parties. We've had Mickey's Halloween Treat. We've had Mickey's Trick or Treat. We've had Mickey's Halloween Party. And they were hopping kind of between Disneyland, Disney California Adventure. Now, I think that the public thinks is that we got Oogie Boogie Bash at Disney California Adventure because Star Wars Galaxy's Edge opened in 2019. Is that true or false?
I can say
That wasn't even a tough question.
I know, and they're going to just throw it to me. I'm going to say we are always looking to balance the experiences that we offer within the resort. So you could look at it that way. You could also look at that Oogie Boogie Bash scales a little bit older than Mickey's Trick and Treat did. While we have stuff for the little ones and the families, we also have stuff for older and the young at heart. So I think that there was more opportunity to do that at Disney California Adventure, and also give bandwidth to Galaxy's Edge for that park to stay open, because of course Oogie Boogie Bash is a private party experience, so we have to close the resort to regular day guests. So it's always a balancing act.
And this is the first time that the party, really the icon isn't Mickey Mouse. It's Oogie Boogie. So Jordan, was that your responsibility?
Yeah, for sure. So one of the big things when we sat down to holistically kind of design and think about the story that we wanted to tell, we knew we wanted to skew and not to eliminate the bottom of the age range, right? The idea wasn't like, no more kids, do it, but we wanted to increase the age range. We know that as trending, as children are becoming a little bit more sophisticated in what they digest, I would say it is, in terms of the media that they have, we could kind of sneak that age range forward a little bit. When we sat down and we thought about how to design it, we always start with story. So we thought about how and why we could take that party from Mickey, and who would take that party from Mickey, because Mickey's, Mickey Mouse, who would steal something. And Oogie Boogie lended the chance, and he's just niche enough. And of course, Nightmare is no longer purely niche, obviously, but still at the edges of the fringe, to not be so character specific. Because if you think about it, if it was Jafar's Halloween party, or if it was Frollo's or something like that, then it tells a very specific story.
Frollo's Halloween party.
I'll get to it.
Coming in
I want to go to Frollo's Halloween party.
All right, done.
We don't have the time or the money
Next
for
time.
that.
Disney Paris, it's on. So Oogie Boogie was just broad enough of a stroke and just deep enough of a cut that it kind of gave us permission to step outside the bounds on creating all of the other content that went alongside of it. And it also gave a fun story conceit, which was, so the whole idea behind Oogie Boogie Bash is a holistic story for the narrative, is that Oogie Boogie was watching Mickey's Halloween party, or whatever we called it for the 20 times before, and basically stewing, right? Because he was like, I'm the king of Halloween, obviously in his own mind. And you've got this happy mouse throwing a Halloween party. This is ridiculous. It's not your time to shine. Sit down. So what he actually did is he decided to steal the party itself. So he cast, that's when you see the spell has been cast. He cast a spell to steal the party away and hosted there at California Adventure. And then he wanted to invite all of the different villains from their worlds into ours. And so that spell, what it did is it actually summoned chunks of their world into ours through the ground. So realistically, if you look at each of the immersive trails, most of them, it looks like something is bursting kind of out of the ground. Or the conceit, if you look at the edges of the platforms, they're all broken. It's because his spells actually pulled them and ripped them into our universe specifically. Now, that was just their thrones, their domain. If you look, almost each one of those immersive trails, also size dependent, has a throne of sorts, because he then divided California Adventure into these different realms for which each of the villains could then rule their sections. So that's the creative conceit behind each of the immersive trails. And then the villains themselves came through a different way. So those are the worlds that are summoned. The villains came through Redwood Creek Challenge Trail, which we'll go into later, which then goes into the story there.
I think we're done, because I just learned more than Did anybody know that backstory? Because that's... You need to write a book.
Done.
There
we'll
we
partner
go.
in one. All right,
Okay.
we'll make it happen.
That's fascinating.
It's a monster multiverse.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, there we go. Disney loves that
Done.
word. Okay. So I don't know. Are you the one that gives permission? Do you greenlight this sort of stuff? Because was Oogie Boogie a tough sell? Was it like, we're taking this from Mickey? That's kind of a big deal.
Yeah, no, I do not get to greenlight things. I wish I did. But we work together and basically bringing the concept together, and then we present it up through various parties in the leadership at the resort to get those approvals.
Surprisingly, wasn't actually there's plenty of things that we do that takes a lot of pushback and a lot of pain and suffering to get it to where we get it out in front of the guests, because everyone has a lot of stakes in it. Oddly enough, Oogie Boogie and the core conceit of the party had almost no resistance. Marketing straight on board right away. I think we were running on parallel paths without realizing it. So when we pitched the conceit of Oogie Boogie being in charge, they were with it and they ran with it as well. So no pushback at all. which was nice.
And Nightmare Before Christmas sells a lot of merchandise, so
does.
that helps too.
Yeah.
But before Oogie Boogie Bash, even Jennifer, you had a history with The Nightmare Before Christmas and the Disneyland Resort.
I do. The Nightmare Before Christmas overlay that we do at Haunted Mansion was one of my projects many, many years ago when that first debuted. So yeah, I've been in the Oogie Boogie Jack Skellington business for a little while now.
Yeah.
Who here loves Haunted Mansion Holiday? Still running strong. I mean, it's been going a long time now.
It's an amazing overlay. I love it every year. And while I'm not directly involved with it any longer, I will say my little tidbit that I always get excited about is when you go through the attic and you see the naughty and nice list, Jennifer's on the list. That's me. And I have been nice this year. So
excellent.
So I'm doing good.
Well, let's start talking about the party at Buena Vista Street, because Buena Vista Street, there we go, is it's a very purple and green Halloween, which is very different than the black and orange. It's like two totally different types of Halloween. I want to know green, I guess, ties into Oogie Boogie, right? But was there something more behind that decision, Casey?
Yeah, there was. We figured that Disneyland owned orange and black. You know, if you walk down Main Street, you see all the pumpkins, you see all the bunting and everything, and it's very Halloween, but can also transition to fall fairly easily. And so, since Disneyland owned orange and black, we decided, well, what is Oogie Boogie? So you go to green, and then if you look at the color palette of Nightmare Before Christmas, it is a lot of that, especially in his scenes, right? So there's that day glow in the dark aspect. So that became sort of the jumping off point for the color palette. And that color palette's found throughout the entire party, whether it's in projection or in lighting.
And Carthay Circle has become kind of a centerpiece of that park, especially for the party, because you have some glorious projections that I will show if this plays. There we go. Some beautiful projections on the Carthay Circle. And I'm kind of curious, like, first of all, how many projectors is that to make it? I'm so impressed with how seamless map projection is these days. Like, It looks like it's one projector, right? But clearly it's not.
That's two.
That's only two.
Two from an oblique angle, actually, which is really weird because we have to get around palm trees and red car trolley lines and everything else.
Okay, so what's the design process like when it comes to something like that? Because it's completely original. It's not like you're showing scenes from the movie or anything.
Correct. So, where do I want to start with projection mapping? So when you projection map, it's not like you're going on a movie screen, right? You've got these sort of arbitrarily complex surfaces. So if you're projecting on a movie screen, it's one thing. If you're projecting on a movie screen and then the front of this stage, and then on these guys over here to the left and right, that's really different. It takes a different number of projectors, and it takes the ability to 3D map the space, which gets into, you have to laser scan the space, the facade specifically, that gets you a 3D model. That 3D model is then converted into a texture, and then all of your content is created for that texture, or if it's previously used content, it goes through a process that we call conforming, so it conforms to the texture. So this is the same process that we use not only at World of Color and for all the fireworks shows, but for Fantasmic, for the Bruno projections that we did earlier this year on Small World, that are still running, I guess, as well as Carthay. So the process is similar for all of them. The media is obviously different. Sometimes we create that media in-house with my team. Sometimes we go outside, just depending on what it is we want to do with the projection.
And this one narratively internal with KC's team, specifically narratively wise, those were installed and created exclusively for this party. The idea being that very rarely with projection mapping do you get a blank canvas. If you picture Main Street, right? I mean, that's the opposite of color tones shift all throughout. There's different angles. Carthay just begged for something to be projected on, which was really nice. And then as for the creative conceit, peeling back the curtain a little bit, the initial idea did involve more specific Tim Burton-esque projection design. A lot of those things come with, money and sync rights and time and clearance, which Jen has to deal with.
The fun stuff.
And then when we decided to pivot away from that, we wanted to creatively, we just wanted something fun every 15 minutes that would be sweet and simple, especially for kids to appreciate, nothing too dark and too intense. So that's why we just went with just fun scenes. What would it look like if Halloween just kind of went chaotic all over the building?
And just to add on to that, one other aspect that you may not think about is those projectors, while we have them out there, we want them to be hidden. We want to hide the magic. So they're actually on lifts so that they can come up, so they can hide away during the day and they can come out when we need to at night.
Which is when I, as the creative, say, wait, I had insert money here. And they say, no, but you spent half of that hiding them. So then we lose.
Very true.
And that area particularly is very difficult to keep in focus. So it's interesting that you made the comment about how seamless it is, because the lifts are so tall, they sway in the wind. Oh, wow. So the projectors are moving constantly and not together because they're on two very separate rooftops.
Yeah, our technical team, I will say that they are so diligent and they're so passionate about keeping it looking seamless. So I just want to throw hats off to them because they do a great job day after day.
Yeah, it looks great. I'm curious, do you come at it from a different angle when you're doing something like the Carthay, where it's kind of a happening, people are walking by and experiencing it, versus a castle show where it's people are camping out for 2 hours to see it?
The approaches are very different. I mean, it's all narrative and story based, but it just depends on ultimately what we're trying to do. Sometimes we're not trying to stop traffic. Right. So with something like the projections on Carthay, it's enough to keep you interested and engaged, but it's not something that you're going to camp out for an hour to watch. Right.
And creative intent, I think, is huge. Like a good point, and trying to set it up like we don't advertise those as being an element. They're not supposed to be. Like a lot of times people think that like everything should be a show. And then, if we don't advertise it, or maybe it's the show that fell to the bottom, that's not the case, because sometimes, it's the theory of theme park elevation, if you will, which is to say that how you present entertainment, and which is the front end of my book that I'll write someday with you, but how you present entertainment equals how it's digested by the audience. So, for example, Dapper Dans, right? We can consider the Dapper Dans one of the most successful entertainment elements through theme park history, correct? But if we were to take the Dapper Dans and pick them up and drop them into the center of the Hyperion Theater and run the exact same show, everyone in here within like 3 minutes would be like, oh, and like get up and leave. Like it would feel underwhelming because it was presented in the wrong way. So a lot of times, like what we work with is making sure marketing isn't advertising something as like, come see because it's not always supposed to be come see Bruno, when we did that, was a big thing. We didn't want this to be a show that people camped out for hours before they watched, because it's 4 minutes long in its totality. And if it was set up in the wrong way, it would be received in the wrong way because it would look like we missed the mark. So a good example there is the projections are just fun moments for people to have and then move on to, versus a full show like KC and I are working on. Wondrous Journeys, I think is what we're calling it now. And we're working on that. That's obviously a show that wants to be marketed differently.
It's kind of goes back to the Walt quote of giving the audience more than what they expect, and that's exactly what it is. Perfect. Let's talk about the trick-or-treat trails, because, Jordan, you have done something that I cannot believe the other resorts haven't ripped off, because you did social distancing before it was cool, right? Like you added characters to the trick-or-treat trails, which before, I don't know how far back you folks going to these parties, but like it used to literally be get in a line, grab candy, leave. And that's still how it's done in Florida, I believe.
Florida.
I mean, I really, really, really love it, because I'm the type of person, I love seeing the characters. I'm not waiting in a 2-hour line for a photo. It's just not happening. But I love interacting with them for a moment during the trick-or-treat trail.
Great.
So how did this come about?
Yeah, that one was interesting, right? Because this was the great experiment that could have absolutely been devastatingly wrong on the choice. So what's interesting, a lot went into this, right? So I started with the company in the 2000s. I started in the entertainment department as a performer. I've gotten to live on the front ends of entertainment. And, when I was there, the autograph book was king, right? Like that was king, and good for whoever invented it at Disney, because it made them a lot of money. But at the same time, for those of us that are obsessed with narrative and storytelling and experience, it actually killed the guest experience, I think, with characters. You have kids walking up with a book out, and they just don't even say a word to the character. And you get the autograph, but there's no interaction, there's no memory, there's no moment. And then it gets lost in the bottom of a drawer and remembered a year later, and then that's it. So it was kind of, it's a double-edged sword. So what we noticed was a small trend happening towards the I don't even know the year phraseology, but in the 1819 range, where suddenly the autograph book had kind of gone away to an extent, and the new autograph right was the digital experience, which actually lends itself back towards narrative. A quick Vine video, old school, I understand. Isn't that sad that Vine is old school? A quick Facebook clip, do it for the gram, that sort of interaction. Suddenly interaction was the autograph. So we took a second and we paused and we looked, and we've done a few successful parties and we've seen moments like I was behind the Disneyland After Dark initial conceit design of what we were doing, and we'd bring out rare characters and you watch a 3-hour line hit, and good for everyone that wants to stand in the 3-hour line. You get that moment, you get that rare character experience, but that's not for everyone. So when we thought about the trails, I wanted to plus them up with energy and creativity. We thought about the story conceit of dividing this world into kingdoms. What could be their kingdom? What could they rule over? And then we thought, originally when the pitch, they were like, oh, so you have the character, so you get some candy, and then you get in line to meet the character. And I was like, if we put them on a stage and we elevate them, then we've instantly broken the psychological need to then walk up to the character and have that touchstone. So the guest comes in from far away realizing, okay, this isn't an actual meet and greet experience. To wit, most people want to just see the character, have a moment, and move on. The photographs and the long-term interactions are not necessarily in the majority. So if we did that, if we provide music, if we create this separation and this barrier, we will naturally create an effect that people then go past, and then you can have as long as you want with the character. If you want to step to the side, generally speaking, you can. You can watch and bask and take pictures and do amazing, photographs. Or you can just get your candy, smile and wave, and Oogie Boogie said hi to me, and that's all I needed in that moment, which allows more people to experience it. Now, that could have absolutely blown up in our face, right? People could have, within day one, been like, whoa, 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 whoa. I wanted to sit there and get a chance to meet Agatha. Well, that was year 2. But, I wanted to have a chance to meet these characters. But, we all held our breath when we opened, and to our excitement, everybody was walking out and was like, oh my gosh, I'm in, I'm out, I got my candy, I had a moment, I got my picture, and I'm on to the next one. And it kind of kicked off something that then carried through. We were COVID before COVID. We were so hipster, right? Because then it ended up working out. Suddenly they got into COVID meet and greets, and the understanding that, and what I love is this forced kids and guests in general to go back to having moments with our performers, moments with our characters, moments that they will carry with them that are memories, as opposed to, oh my God, 2 hours and for one picture and then to leave. So that was the idea, and it ended up working out really well. And the set design behind them was theatrical. Tom Zofre, who designs all of those, designs mini operatic scenes, in my opinion. Like, we talk about story, the conceit. I'll give you the conceit behind Ernesto if you want to know. Like, all of these are really deep stories, just as deep as the party itself.
Hold Ernesto. We're getting to him. Yeah, they're so successful. Honestly, some of my favorite character interactions ever have been through that. Jennifer, I know you cannot give a dollar number, but I would love a percentage number. I'm really curious. What percentage of budget goes to candy?
Oh, you know what? I actually have no idea. I have no idea. I know Mars is our sponsor, so thank you, Mars.
It's a ton of candy.
Yeah, it is a ton. I will say that, my family, my husband, my son, and I, last year came home between the 3 of us with 13 pounds of candy.
Unbelievable.
Like, I had to weigh it, and we'd eaten a little bit.
And when we opened
up,
we watched, it was someone, maybe in the room, I don't know, was in, and they were like ripping on us in the first round because they got like 2 pieces of candy. And they're like, oh, 2 pieces of candy. Way to go, Disneyland. Way to cheap out. And then within an hour, the next tweet came out that was like, I don't have any more room for candy. And I was like, yeah, because there's like 18 stations throughout there, the bubbling cauldrons. So we're good.
No, they're super generous with it. And if somebody really wants a trick, this is a fat boy trick right here. Take the candy that they give you and then be like, oh, do you have Snickers or whatever your favorite is? And then they'll give you that on top of what they already gave you. Such a fat boy trick, but hey, I've done it quite a few times. In any case, so how do you decide if it's going to be a meet and greet or a trick or a treat trail?
So for that, right, we need, if you picture what the treat trail experience is, it's big, it's larger than life. It's huge. And our Disney villains generally all fit that bill. Treat trails have to be villains. Obviously, the kingdom was divided up. I saw a lot of people that were trying to talk smack on my narrative conceit behind Bruno appearing this year, and he's not a villain. He's not a villain. That's why it wasn't an immersive treat trail. Like, it takes 2 seconds to realize he's not that. So Bruno wasn't that. So you've got to be a villain. You have to be invited by Oogie Boogie, and then obviously you have to be larger than life. We need the treat trail experience to be entertaining to perform to. So not that there are a lot of very small Disney villains, so I can't think of many that wouldn't fit, but we also like rarity, right? You'll notice that the first few villains rotated out. We had the evil queen. She took her leave because, again, the queen is a fairly common character, so rarity is really important for us.
Let's take a look at a few of the characters we got here while we chat. Love him, but some new ones we got this year. Just enjoy that as we chat. Mad Madam Mim is in there now. We got Mother Gothel. Bruno, as you mentioned. We got
Not a treat.
not a treat
Not a
show, but
treat
I'm just
trail.
saying in general, the characters at the event. Bruno's new this year. We got 3 classic characters dressed as the Sanderson sisters from Hocus Pocus. We've got some Kingdom Hearts characters. I am skipping the big one for a moment. But first of all, I want to know, you're clearly obsessed with the Sword and the Stone because this man put a float in a parade at Disneyland that is Sword and the Stone with Magic Happens, which is returning finally in 2023. Who saw it during the 2 weeks? Anybody? Yes?
All right.
Okay.
OG.
For those of you who didn't, it's coming back. But I mean, you clearly love that movie, but what is the pitch meeting like? Yeah, we're going to bring Mad Madam Mim to Trick or Treat Trail.
The pitch meeting is that I care about all of our audience as opposed to just the metrics that sit at the top, right? Like, I think it's very easy to respond to the hot hand when it comes to social influence, media moments. The 3 of us, for example, represent a much larger team, but when we sit down, we are fully aware that there are people who their first film could have been Sword of the Stone. We're very aware that the first film that they watched with their grandfather was Sword in the Stone because it was their first film. To just go after the now is to ignore the legacy that we build on, especially Walt's vision, but then to also stop and pause, and what's safe is the opposite of what he wanted as well. So we're always trying to balance out a little bit of something. So if you looked at this year, for example, right, you have Mother Gothel, who sits in, it's very weird to say, but a classic Disney story, because it still seems new to me. It's not. You've got Mad Madam Mim, who sits to the very, very classic going back. And then you've got our other friend Ernesto, obviously, who is much more, modern when it comes to that element. So providing a little bit of something to everyone is hugely important as we sit down and design everything we do.
And it's funny because those seem to be the ones that go viral, or these kind of like niche ones.
Well, we thought it was interesting last year, right, when we brought the first new lineup of villains, right? And we had Sid, Agatha, and Cruella. What was interesting was each one dominated a different segment of the social world. It was fascinating. If you went by Cruella, Instagram queen. Like, she photographs so well. She's a diva in her own right and all that, but the set reads well, the lighting reads well. Everything about it is just this photography moment. When you went to the idea of like Twitter and quippy aspect, Agatha ruled the day, right? She was the hot hand coming off of that show. She was the most viral element, unexpected. People didn't see that coming. So she kind of ruled that. And then Sid owned YouTube and anything that was long form, because to listen to Sid just destroy people emotionally in the Disneyest of ways, this coming from an ex-Universal Grinch.
I could sit there all day and listen to Sid, and I swear when I was in 2nd grade, that is who pushed me off my bike. I'm positive it was him.
Yep.
I love Sid, but was he hard to convince to greenlight as well? Because, I mean, he is kind of just insulting people, and like you said, in a Disney way.
Yeah, not horribly. Pixar is a good partner of ours when it comes to trying to do, it was like wouldn't you want to do insert modern character that we just did? And like, again, you have to understand our audience is very different. Our audience lives with what you create. It's not at the forefront of what you create, not the intent.
Yeah, and I would also say that Jordan has an excellent track record for understanding the pulse of what our guests are looking for. And I think while there's always discussions about our choices, I don't think that I can't recall a lot of pushback on anything that we've gotten that from a creative standpoint.
Yep.
That's awesome. I love the characters. Now we got to talk about the big one this year. Ernesto de la Cruz.
Yeah.
Have you all seen this? Even if not in person, check this out. I mean, did you know when you were creating this that this was the
no
thing?
clue. Nope, terrifying.
2 weeks before, we weren't sure.
Nope.
Wow.
Truly. So if you notice, right, we do those teasers every year, right?
Which are hilarious because you don't even need them anymore because it sells out anyway.
Don't tell
Don't say that. We like doing them. We really like doing them.
We love the teasers.
Listen, I love them too, but it's just like you sold out so fast.
Yeah,
It's
we don't
incredible.
need to do them, but we like pushing the brand forward. If you'll notice, Ernesto was not teased. One of those great reasons was we truly had no idea that this would work 2 weeks before. Because when we sat down to design this experience, the idea behind, so the story, I'll jump into the story and the lighting and all that, but we didn't know that it was possible. The first video of him, it's literally him walking to set that hit 22 million views in day one and when it dropped. And it's just him walking past in broad daylight. We didn't even know. It was literally 2 hours before we opened. So I called Jen and it's just, I called Jen like 2 hours before we opened. And I went, we didn't, we haven't looked at this in daylight. Like I forgot Oogie Boogie Bash opens in sunlight. Like, oh my God. Like oh my God. And I called her. I'm like, we have to do a test. So go.
Yeah, no, I mean, because we had kept Ernesto so locked down that we didn't want any leak that we were going down this path. So yeah, we were definitely
and I showed up
nervous.
fully ready to cut him until to be an evening experience, similar like a Villain's Grove or something to that effect. And he walked around the corner in broad daylight. And Jen, like my exact response was, damn it. Yeah, no, he looks really good. Like I really wanted, I wanted the full immersive experience with lights because all of the tree trails I'd much prefer, obviously, when nighttime hits. It's much more immersive. Just as a director, I prefer that experience, but he looks so damn good. So we had no idea it was going to be as successful as it did. So the idea when we designed that is he was actually damned, cursed, however you want to look at it. His punishment was to have to relive playing his moment, his song, every minute of every hour of every day for the rest of his life in eternity. And he's so damn arrogant, he didn't realize that was a punishment. He gets to perform his song every minute of every day of every year for eternity because that's exactly how full of himself he is. So what's fun is Tom, when he designed the set design, if you pay attention to it, you'll see that the roses have started to die. As true fans have faded out, right? The white roses at various stages of decay. You'll see he's surrounded by his marble statues. If you go up and look close, they're cracking throughout. There's little bits that have started to crumble off. So the facade of Ernesto de la Cruz is completely falling apart around him. But again, he has absolutely no idea that it's happening. All he knows is that his adoring fans are still there. And that is all that he cares about. Even his song has taken on this haunting minor melody key and been reinvented. And again, he's just completely unaware because he's Ernesto de la Cruz.
I love it. We've gotten some great characters, some shocking characters through the year. Are there any that, let's go down the line, that you would like to see, any villains you would like to see brought to Oogie Boogie Bash, and any that were pitched and not allowed?
We still have next year to do, so this is going to be... I don't know that we want to...
Were there any that were pitched that were just like, no, it's not going to work for one reason?
We actually haven't. Well, I don't think we've brought anything forward where it was like a hard no to a character. Disney's been, wonderful. The partners and the different studios have been wonderful. And we have... Next, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, I have my deep cut request, which I know we'll never actually
you can pitch that one because I'm not doing that.
Let's hear it.
I want to do Doc Hopper from the Muppet
Why would
movie,
you
right?
say no to that,
Why would
Jordan?
you say no to the Muppets?
Because I got like 6 in a row. Oh, I love the Muppets. I did Muppets Christmas Caroling Coach. I love the Muppets.
I know. See?
Dude, we need
Hopper.
at least the food stand with the giant frog
Right?
legs.
There you go. Then that would be good.
Oh,
I like that.
Oh my gosh. I just wish Honey, I Shrunk the Kids had a villain because I'd be like, bring that in.
So next year we have started discussions for next year.
Not Doc.
And not Doc.
Oh, man.
So you can print that.
Jennifer, just take some money away and be like...
Well, but one of the things we have talked about is, as culture has changed, as Disney filmmaking has changed, it gets harder and harder to find villains.
Yes.
So who's going dressed up as family dysfunction from Encanto this week?
Mother issues? Anyone?
Right.
Because the villain from Turning
That's
Red.
the weirdest thing, though. Like, they just announced there may potentially, perhaps, be a Villain's Land at Magic Kingdom coming. And I'm like, you guys don't make villains anymore. What are you doing?
Yeah.
Like, I love it, but...
I'll be curious to see if we get back into the business of villains.
You need to.
I mean, I think, and again, luckily, so we tell stories of storytellers, right? Like that's our conceit, right? Because we don't drive original content generally. So we're eagerly awaiting, just like everyone else, to say like, what's the next thing that we can take and run with? The 2 or 3 planned for next year. I have one that will absolutely break everybody's brain in here, and no one's expecting it. I promise. I promise. It's gonna be good.
So clearly you're thinking this a year plus in advance, but how close was like the closest character? Like Agatha was pretty quick turnaround, right? Because she wasn't out a year before the party.
So from a production standpoint, I'll let Jen talk to it because it's her hell. Is if you picture it, so generally speaking, because I came from Universal for a while too. Murdy's already working on Halloween next year a month and a half ago. So they spend a year working on, not spends a good chunk of time. We ramped up last year's in earnest in what?
We started in earnest July 1st last year to open on, what was it, September 6th or 7th. So, yeah, it was a ridiculous
turnaround. So all that work
turnaround.
is done in about 2 months.
Yeah, this year we started, again,
So
too
early.
late. I know, or late for, March, we started on this year's new characters. And I'm working really hard to start us working now.
Yep.
And there's a lot of, internal factors that go into when we start working on things because we are never not busy.
I was going to say, this isn't your only gig. Like, you've got a
Correct.
lot of other
Correct. And we
parties
don't,
and shows.
yeah, and we don't have a slow season anymore. There is no downtime.
Yeah, because each of us is obviously working on different. You've got World of Color 1, you've got Wondrous Journeys, and World of Color 1. We've got other elements, but we want to. This is such a passion project for most of us. We love being out there in the party and watching it happen, and I love those villains each year. And what we've done is what we tried to do is create a brand. Right? There's a reason that Knott's or Universal have been celebrating their 25th and 35th year of Knott's. They haven't had to rebrand their parties across the board because they keep their content fresh within the outside of the party. Our brand is not mazes. Our brand is immersive trails. So how long can we constantly keep that interest coming? How long can we tease it? That's why I will never stop trying to do the teasers, because we want people to think like, oh, what's coming next? I can't wait till they drop it so we can dig into it and pull it apart and figure out what it is and, try and find out. So that is our brand, and I hope that keeps this party running more than 5, 6, 7 years, the typical life of a Disney party.
Yeah, it's great. Let's talk a minute about the parade, because correct me if I'm wrong, this is a new thing for Disneyland Resort Halloween parties, right? I know that the Boo-to-You parade is huge in Florida, but is Oogie Boogie the first Halloween party to have a parade? No.
No,
Okay.
and actually, I think from the three of us, I don't think any of us have a direct. Oh, maybe.
I do, yeah.
Okay, yeah, I'm gonna throw to KC.
Frightfully Fun was, I can't remember the name of it when it was running
It
during.
was like a cavalcade, right? It was a much smaller
Yes,
thing at Disneyland.
It was much
Yeah.
smaller. Had the worst song ever written. Oh my God, it was awful. I can't, I've purged it from my memory. But it was
Pardon
not.
me while I search that and play it for you.
It was the cutest little darn Halloween song you've ever heard, which was why it was wrong. But yeah, some of the floats survived and have made it into Frightfully Fun. But yeah, this one is I think it's the best parade we do personally, just because I love the art direction. I love all the characters.
There's some cool lighting toys now, right?
Oh yeah. The Haunted Mansion unit with the gravediggers and all the ghosts, all the dancing ghosts.
And then now the parade route lighting.
Yes. We're transitioning all the parade route lighting in DCA over to LED, so that gives us a lot more control over color and timing and everything else.
So if you pay attention when the parade goes by now, there's the lights sync more in terms of there's active moments with the parade, and you'll see that with Magic Happens at night.
When it comes back, yeah.
Now, something that I don't know if this is factual, maybe you guys can correct me, but I find so interesting. We got Haunted Mansion up on the screen right now. Is this the first time that a parade has featured a float of an attraction that isn't in the park that it's in? Because if you think about it, it's weird. You would never go to Walt Disney World and see a Spaceship Earth float in Magic Kingdom. You know what I mean? It's kind of bizarre, but it so works.
As long as you eliminate Tokyo, whenever you say, is this the first time? Just assume Tokyo isn't included because they've probably done it. I think so. And I think the idea is that Haunted Mansion is transcended beyond its bounds. It's just such a Halloween associated element that I think there was almost someone did bring that up for half a second, and then everyone was like, nah, it's Haunted Mansion.
I just think it's impressive that the Disneyland Resort as a whole is looked as one big picture. I feel like much more so than Walt Disney World.
Rather than
and also you could tie in stick some Haunted Mansion Holiday on that, and you can
there you go.
mark it in
then we'd be set.
Yeah.
Or what if somebody did like Muppets? Haunted Mansion would be really cool.
I'd be cool with that.
That's not a tease. I don't have anything to
we
do
got
with
a couple media people here. Write it down. Next year.
It's like the D23 session.
I'll find the money.
I heard Florida doing it.
Yes, let's say Florida did it.
Yeah. So, yes, the Frightfully Fun Parade. We got to talk about something that I'm obsessed with, and that is Villains Grove.
Yay.
Because, first of all, why don't you... I was actually upset when the party was moving from Disneyland to DCA. I was like, my favorite thing was the mood created at Rivers of America. I was like, where are they going to recreate that? And then all of a sudden, you do this thing called Villains Grove that blew my mind, and I was like, this party better never leave DCA. So just, Casey, can you describe it a bit just for folks? I mean, it's up on the screen, but for folks who have never walked through it and experienced it.
It is so hard to describe, and it does not translate well to photos or video, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So it is one of those things that you just have to experience. So the general idea was that we wanted to create a space that the villains inhabited that was essentially their worldview, right? And when Jordan and I first started talking about it, he was like, it's Halloween, but it's beautiful, because the villains would think that their space is beautiful. It's beautiful to them. And so, we started looking around at, anybody who's lived in Southern California for a while, has maybe been to Enchanted Forest at Descanso Gardens or LA Zoo Lights. There's a company out there called Moment Factory that does a lot of these immersive types of experiences. And so we looked at those and we thought, okay, those are cool. They're not necessarily, the scenes aren't necessarily linked by any sort of a narrative thread. So that's a missed opportunity. And they're all themed around the other holidays. And we hadn't seen anything that was scary in a beautiful way. So we're like, okay, when you're trying to identify something that you want to do that's new, a lot of times you're looking to something that people haven't done before or haven't iterated on before. So coming up with Villains Grove was exactly that. It was, let's create these immersive worlds without characters, with just lighting and audio and projection. And lots and lots of haze. And I think we did a pretty good job. It's kind of awesome.
You did the most amazing job ever. And I'm going to tell you, this is so geeky and nerdy, but maybe somebody in this room would appreciate it. It's my favorite use of a fog machine at a live event ever. And it's because I don't hear... I love the fact that the fog machines are out of sight, you can't hear them, and it's just brought in so beautifully. Unless, it's the Lion King section, you want that.
Right.
Yes.
But, oh my God, it's unbelievable.
They're not machines, actually.
What are they?
They're not fog machines. They're water mist.
Oh.
So we could avoid that very specific thing.
Oh,
Yeah.
There you go.
It's just...
So when we designed, so the creative conceit for anybody who wants to know, the extension of the Oogie Boogie original story is, right, he summoned the lands through the grounds that appeared. And then when he summoned the villains themselves into our world, he actually opened a portal at the back. You can't see it, but at the back of Redwood Creek. And that's where they walked through the forest. And when they walked through the forest, they actually twisted the forest just with their presence, their evilness. And so you actually saw the trees bend. You saw the light start to shift. You heard the echoes of their music. You heard the echoes of their voices. And those are actually the wisps, which are the caretakers of the forest that you hear speaking. And they're echoing what they heard when the villains passed through. So, for example, as Judge Claude Frollo walked through that section, stained glass light started to form as opposed to the trees bent themselves into candelabras. And then you hear the wisps whispering his, guilty and whatnot that kind of echoed him. So that's the creative conceit behind. And then when you head in, you're getting lulled into a nightmare, basically, is the idea. You walk through that opening tree, and you're taken into this nightmare. You're walking throughout, and towards the end, at the end of the forest, the wisps, they're watching you the whole time. If you pay attention, the wisps pop up and they're projected all throughout. As you get through the lightning forest, they've decided you've had enough. They bring you safely into their glade, which is their home. They live in that log where you see that's the portal to their world. You're seeing refractions of their light everywhere around there. And then they wake you from your dream, which is why we call that last scene the resolution of dawn.
Are we walking to heaven? What's going on?
We are. No, thank you. Right? No. So that is inspired by the Ave Maria scene, specifically from Fantasia. Right? One of the gags that I'd love to do someday that we tried to do, but we just couldn't pull off in the amount of time and money that we have, was you were actually going to see the monks.
Jennifer.
You were going to see the monks of the Abbey in their shadows walking alongside you through the trunks. But the idea there is that you are, a lot of people have taken it as stepping through heaven. For us, it's waking up from this nightmare and waking up into your perfect world is the idea.
Who here hasn't experienced it in person? Anybody? Because
it's really cathartic. It's interesting. The reason we tried not to touch the narrative too heavily throughout that, because you kind of get to experience your own story. Everybody takes a little bit different away from them at the end. I've seen plenty of people come through the fog at the end just like full on tears streaming because it has that heaven effect, which is the idea.
It's like a spiritual experience, and I'm like not saying that lightly. It really blew my mind.
And we did have to fight, when you talk about, this is one we did have to fight very strongly on, because on two factors. We had one camp that absolutely wanted characters in the experience. And there are still plenty of guests that do give feedback and they say it'd be better if there are characters. And it's one of those times where you have to say, agree to disagree. I believe that the experience is intended to be internal as opposed to external. We throw tons of characters at you. We throw tons of candy at you. This is a moment of quiet introspection inside of a theme park, which is one of the rarest things you'll ever find inside of a theme park. Something that you can take at your own pace, which, again, completely unheard of. Most of the time, you're ushered along at a specific speed. And we felt those things would break the narrative journey so that people couldn't have those cathartic experiences at the end. I know Patrick Dougal, right, who does some of his, he had one of my favorite moments that I use.
He's right there.
Oh, shut up. What's up? Hey, bud. One of my favorite elements that I include in every resume and reel that I ever put together was at the end when you get to watch people have moments, and that just doesn't happen in theme parks all that often. So we didn't want that element.
Was there ever a different idea for Redwood Creek Challenge Trail, or was it always this?
It pretty much was always this. The stories that we wanted to tell didn't really change that much from our first conversation. Because if I remember correctly, the first time we were talking, you had said, "Okay, so we begin with Frollo," and I was like, "Oh, I am in,
sold,
so in,
sold."
Right?
We get Hellfire in
right.
Villains.
Anyway,
Grove.
We can squeeze in Hellfire.
Yes,
I'm good.
Bring it back to World of Color, please.
But then, what we really wanted was to do a blended transition into all of these stories and have them sort of bleed into one another, as opposed to, we're going to have a Frollo moment, and then we're going to have a Maleficent moment, and then we're going to have a Alice in Wonderland moment. It was more about trying what is that connective tissue that combines them all together. And we came up with a lighting language that allows specific colors from the previous scene to carry through into the next scene, and then that transitions into another color that takes you into the third scene. So it's all sort of like, it's a little bit more subtle, but I think it really, really works in bridging all of the different scenes, because otherwise some of the scenes would make sort of no sense following one another. And we want that, similar to the tree trails, to continue to evolve. So our intent is to always try and go back. Well, this one takes a lot more infrastructure, so the evolution can't be yearly. But the idea is, as it lives on, you'll see other villains step in and take over sections. And the entire thing is an original soundtrack, start to finish, in terms of like fully custom scored.
Sell it, please. Sell it.
Right?
Please.
I keep trying. Thank you. Because it's stunning. Hayam Azar. You'll hear Tori Letzler is the voice that you hear, that ethereal female singer at the end that you hear. She comes to us for Cirque du Soleil. She's an amazing composer in and of her own rights. It was an act of love from all of us, and to prove how deep, because this is my moment. There was one night they decided, Jen got this call from me breaking down. They decided they wanted to add candy to the trail, and
at the exit, when you're going to heaven,
literally.
Well, I think candy's okay. I mean, that's a pretty nice welcome.
Fair point.
So they had a treat cart placed there, and I went out immediately to watch. And I literally called Jen Magill, and then I called the vice president of the park in literal tears, because it devastated the experience. Because they were like, "Get your bags out, have your bags ready for candy," through the fog, while people are trying to have this experience. And everything that we create, this team, I can tell you personally, is very personal to us. We have never phoned one thing in. This is our art. This is our joy. And to have that moment torn down, it was horrifying. So I called her crying, and I called the vice president. I was like, "Please, God, take the candy out. Hand it all over to my friend here." And then they got rid of it within about 40 minutes. So that was good.
Yeah. And I will say that to our leadership's credit, they were like, "We just want to try." And it's hard to fight with, "We just want to try." But we let them try. And they quickly said, "Yeah, we're wrong."
All right. Well, as you get ready to add new characters in there, I'm excited to see the Sanderson sisters. That's all I have to say. So make that happen.
Mike, I give you overlays.
Wow.
They're cute.
Let's add the Sanderson sisters.
Okay, all right, done. All right.
The dog hopper.
Before we move on from Villains Grove, I want you to tell the story about an email you got.
Yeah. So, as Jordan said, we are all very, very passionate about what we do, and we're very proud of what we do. But sometimes you can get a little disconnected and understand the level that sometimes it resonates. And one of the things from the very first year that always stuck with me was we got an email about a month into the run. And it was from, I think it was actually a cast member who generally goes to Disney events with their visually impaired friend. And they will go and they will describe everything to this friend of theirs. And they got to Villains Grove, and the friend started, as he always did, describing things. And his friend just basically put his arm on his shoulder and said, "Stop, I can see this." And it gives me chills every single time to know that, like, he was able to see and feel and experience everything that we created through his own lens, and it was still just as impactful. And that one always hits me that, we don't always know who we're creating this experience for, but to know that it can work on so many different levels is it's valuable.
Remarkable.
Right? And the other thing is too, it's the rest of the party is fairly modular. It kind of comes and goes. Villains Grove is absolutely not. It is a monster to install and to strike, especially when you're dealing with a protected tree like the redwood that you can't touch. And there are 700 and some lighting fixtures and 14 projectors and miles of audio cable and data cable and tons of speakers and all sorts of special effects. So a huge shout out to the crew that works on that installation and striking it, because they are amazing.
Yeah, because when you think about that place from a logistical, for people that are nerds like us, from a logistical standpoint, that place, it's not wired for any of that. Like, you don't even think, I don't think about that, because luckily I get to be a creative, and then they have to pay for it and they have to do it. And so when I'm like, just throw lights there, and how? Where are you going to plug it in, Jordan? I was like, is there not a plug behind that tree? What? So when you think about it, that whole area, that has nothing. They literally had to trench and dig and create server lines and not touch the roots of redwood for months. I think it was 3-4 months to get the initial in.
The first year we started in May, and when they talk about digging and trenching, sometimes it's literally with a spoon because you have to be so delicate. So we had to be really good partners with not only horticulture that protects and speaks for the trees out there, but also our WDI partners that were very protective of the look of how things look during the daytime. So we were blessed by the fact that Tom Zofrey, our scenic designer, his son happens to work in the national parks. So all of the theming of the covers and the boxes, they look like, they're legit.
And that's another thing you don't think about, right, is a big chunk of budget going towards how do you can't just put a projector where Disney, right? There's certain levels that certain theme parks have, and some you could just throw the projector up, but we are not going to. So then half of Tom's budget's going to go to building birdhouse enclosures
for the world's biggest birds.
Weather stations.
And there's chunks of his money gone. Those are the things you don't think about from a design perspective. How do I plug it in, and then how do I cover it up at the same time that obviously the team took a lot of care to.
Yeah, but even now we start that install in July. So
and there's some stuff that's permanent now that you've put.
There's some, but not a lot.
Wow.
Not a lot.
It's crazy. Well, round of applause for Villains Grove, please. Oh my gosh, I love it so much. I want to talk real briefly about something that you kind of inherited, I guess, is Cars Land. That already had a Halloween overlay before Oogie Boogie Bash existed. How does that work? Did you get involved with any changes for that, or are you just kind of letting WDI do their thing?
We didn't really touch anything. I think I designed it's been a long time, but I designed the new nighttime, the shaboom, we call it the shaboom moment, the typical turnover from night to day. And we do the put a spell on you version of it. So that was really, I think, the only way that we touched it. I mean, because that's one of the best land overlays in Disney's history. I mean, it's phenomenal. It's why touch what's perfect?
They do a really, really great job. I think we're running out of time here, unfortunately. This has been a super, super interesting conversation. Before we leave, I want to say thank you to the staff at the Frida Cinema. They have been excellent partners. Their sponsors, Midsummer Scream, the Halloween and Horror Convention, as well as the Airbnb Ghostly Retreat. If you haven't seen this Haunted Mansion-themed Airbnb, it's crazy, and it's 15 minutes from Disneyland.
And I started as a butler. That was my first gig at Disney on the college program. So that place is cool.
Very cool. And sponsor Disney Coast to Coast, which just so happens to be my podcast. Hey, thank you. Thank you to KC, Jordan, Jennifer. Thank you so much. This was a blast. And that's going to do it.
Thanks for tuning into this episode. Don't miss any future episodes by subscribing and following Disney with a Z coast to coast on your favorite podcast app. If you enjoy the show, consider supporting it by visiting the Who's Its and What's Its link in this episode's description, where you can find all sorts of magically inspired apparel. It's the perfect place to start your holiday shopping for the Disney fans in your life. And don't forget that DCTC listeners can save 15% off of their entire order simply by using discount code DCTC when checking out. This episode has been executive produced by Mackenzie Jalen Arnold. Gain rewards like Mackenzie, including access to never-before-heard episodes and live-stream Q&As, by visiting the Patreon link in this episode's description. And don't forget that I'll be matching 100% of your first month subscription to the New York Restoration Project for all new patrons joining this month, October of 2022. Basically, anything you need can be found in this episode's description, from additional information and links discussed in this episode found in the show notes, to the DCTC hotline where you can leave a voicemail and be heard on a future episode, access to the show's official website, some free gifts from me to you, and so much more. So be sure to check out this episode's description. Other than that, folks, have a magical day and a very happy Halloween. Bye!
Thanks for listening to Disney Coast to Coast. Have a magical day.
Disney Coast to Coast is produced and hosted by Jeff DePauli. Learn more about the podcast and become a supporter at DisneyCoastToCoast.com. This podcast is part of the DePodcast Network. Learn more about this show, plus find more quality and entertaining podcasts at DePodcastNetwork.com. That's DEPodcastNetwork.com.